ability to continue interacting, talking with the poster presenters, and discussing the questions that we may have remainers from the discussion this morning. Just as a recap from yesterday, after the session yesterday, we met in a small committee, and we want to translate to you today that this is for us, this is the initial steps of the collaboration of the two institutes. So please, when you are today listening to the second round of the talks, start thinking about the collaborations that you may want to establish with colleagues from the other institute, because our willingness as both directorships, what we would like is to start thinking about sharing students, maybe through organizing some TFM, some master students together, where we can put some fundings to have these students. We have to have a concrete initiative between the two directorships that we will further discuss next week in CRM in UAB. But start thinking about potential, maybe, students that you may want to share together. Okay, and with that, I'm going to leave you with the first talk. Today, Gonzalo is going to chair the session. So if you want to come here to introduce Álvaro. And thank you, everybody.
So that's it. Thank you, Álvaro, for coming. Álvaro is going to talk about new mathematical laws to describe the spatial distribution of individuals. You have
Thank you.
30 minutes.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to the organization for giving me this opportunity to explain some of the things we are doing at the Centro de Recerca Matemática. I don't know if you, can you listen to me? No. Okay. Well, I have to confess that although I work at the Centro de Recerca Matemática, I am not a mathematician, so you don't need to be scared of me. Okay. What is the talk? Here. Okay. Okay. Well, let me first start mentioning an already existing collaboration between the Centro de Recerca Matemática and the Instituto de Ciencias del Mar, which is the CAFE ITN project. CAFE means Climate Advanced Forecasting of Subseasonal Extreme, and this is what the project is about. And the collaboration is done through the co-supervision of Niklas Rieger. So the student is co-supervised between the ICM and between the CRM. And in this case, the co-supervision is done by Estrella Olmedo and Antonio Turiel. It's about using C-surface salinity to try to forecast extreme precipitation. Okay. Another collaboration in a smaller scale, in which CRM is not a partner, but there is also a collaboration, is in the Minke project about marine litter and these things. And well, this project is coordinated by Jaume Piera, and the collaboration is also through Niklas Rieger, which is part of the Centro de Recerca Matemática, and now is at the Instituto de Ciencias del Mar. Okay. And I'm not going to explain you anything about this, because you have already here Estrella, Antonio, and Jaume, and you can ask them for these projects, and they know, of course, much more than me. What I'm going to explain is these new mathematical laws for the spatial distribution of individuals, but with a question mark. So this is not a statement, but a question. Am I going to present some new mathematical laws? Maybe you will tell me if they are new or not. Okay. And this work, the main thing that I'm going to explain is done in collaboration with Montse García del Muro. What is the interest of this talk, or why this talk could be interesting to you, if there is some interest? Well, I think there is an important connection between ecology and mathematics. What we have here, from the mathematical point of view, is just a set of points. We have points in 2 dimensions, distributed in a space of 2 dimensions. You recognize here the map of Catalonia, okay? But there is no map here. Here we only have individuals, okay? So the individuals draw the map. what are these individuals? Well, these individuals are persons, okay? Human beings, okay? So if you live in Catalonia, you should be somewhere here. So we have your coordinates. We don't have your name, but we have your coordinates. So every dot is a person. There are about 7 million dots here, and this corresponds to the place of residence where everybody lives. So this is a static photo. There is no dynamic here. Nobody is moving. Okay? What we want to do is to characterize this population. We want to learn something or to be able to describe how is this distribution of people. Okay? And which are its spatial properties. Of course, we are working with human beings. But for us, as I told you, this is just points. But this could be also animals. The treatment would be the same. So for this reason, I think that there is a connection between what we have been doing very recently, this is very recent work, and between what we have been doing and ecology. The first thing that you realize is that this data is highly heterogeneous. You don't need to look at the data to know that around Barcelona, there will be a lot of people. And in the Pyrenees, for example, there is much less people. Okay, so an important thing is the heterogeneity. Okay, the data is high resolution. If we take a zoom from the Barcelona area, this is what we get. These are not the streets of Barcelona. This is the people who live in some apartment or some building in Barcelona. So it's the people who draw the map of Barcelona, the map of Barcelona. Okay, so this is the data that we have. Catalonia is interesting not only because we live here, but in Catalonia we have the most densely populated square kilometer in Europe. Okay, and this is this square kilometer which is shared between Barcelona. This is Barcelona, and this is Hospitalet, and this is Riera Blanca that separate both municipalities. Okay, you realize that this separation is arbitrary, so there is no reason why Barcelona ends here and Hospitalet starts here. Okay, well, and the population of this square kilometer is 50,000 inhabitants, just in here, the highest density in Europe. Okay. Well, which is our mathematical procedure? This is very, very simple. We take a grid, this is a grid, and we count the number of individuals in each cell. As there is a high variability, you will have grid cells in which there are a lot of people and grid cells in which there is very few people or even zero. Nobody is living there. Okay, and we plot the probability density. Okay, this is number of individuals in each grid cell, and this is the probability density. I should have put here some bars because this is just an histogram. An histogram, but in logarithmic scale. This is logarithmic, and this is logarithmic. And this corresponds to about 100 meters. So the size of the cells is 100 meters. It's much more smaller than we have here. We are counting how many people we have in 100 meters, and we have that this change between 1, even 0. There are squares in which you have 0 inhabitants, but this is not here because this is logarithmic. This is range between 1 and more than 1,000, about 3,000. Okay? So you see here the high variability. It is important to realize that we have one parameter that is the width of the cell, that we call L. If we change the size of the cell, the number of inhabitants change. If we increase the width, the number of inhabitants will increase. Okay? So we do this for different cell sizes, 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters, and this is the different distribution that we get. The larger the size of the cell, the more inhabitants, or not, because we also keep cells with just one inhabitant. You realize here also that there is no sharp change. If you go below 100, below 10, the thing is smooth, so there is no reason to stop counting. And in fact, the mode of the distribution is in 2. So 2 is the most, so the couple of people is the most common thing you find. Okay? Well, now starts the mathematics. We are going to assume that there is a scaling law for explaining this distribution. What means a scaling law? A scaling law means that we have the same distribution, but at different scale. When we change the size, the width of the cells, the distribution will change, but keeping the same shape. So we assume this is the number of inhabitants. We have some power law, and then some function that could be an exponential or some other function. We don't care about this concrete form. And this is the important thing, the scale parameter. This is the only thing that changed. All the rest is fixed. Okay? And C will depend on L, the size of the grid. Okay? Well, this is let's say this is called an scaling answer. This is an hypothesis that we are going to see if it's verified or not. Okay. When you have this thing, you can compute the moments of the distribution. The moments are just the mean, the variance, and all that. These are the moments. So you take the variable raised to a power q, and then calculate this integral, this very simple integral. You don't know this function. This function is not defined, okay? But you know some properties. You know that it decays fast, and this is enough not to compute exactly the value of the moments, but compute how the moments scale with the scale parameter. So you have that for q, this is q smaller than, smaller than 1, 0 or negative moments, this thing is constant. But for q larger than 1, this thing grows, okay? And when c goes to infinity, this thing diverges, but we are not going to care about that. Okay, then with this simple formula, we can compute that the second moment divided by the first moment give us the scale parameter. Okay, and the square of the second moment divided by the cube of the first moment give us this thing, c to the nu, that appears here. What does it mean? It means that we do not know the parameters. Even we do not have a parametric form for this function, but still we can verify this thing. Just computing the moments. These are the moments of the distribution, and we will use the empirical moments. So this is a trick that I learned some years ago. I think it's a very useful trick when you have scaling, but I think people do not know well this trick. So the idea is that you can replace this form in which you have some parameters that you cannot estimate by this form, okay? Just replacing this simple. So everything is simple and is here. So the trick to see if scaling is fulfilled without computing any parameter is to, if you put this thing here, is to represent the distribution. This is the probability density, the histogram, multiplied by this combination of moments versus the variable also rescaled by these moments. Okay? So if you do this is the original data, and this is the rescaled data. Okay? You see that the rescaled data collapses, so you see the form of the function f, and in this way you verify that scaling is fulfilled, except for small values, except for this data here that corresponds to number of inhabitants below 10. Okay, this is this part of the distribution. For this part of the distribution, scaling is not fulfilled, but for more than 10 inhabitants, yes. Okay, approximately. Okay. I'm going to skip this. This is about the inadequacy to use the negative binomial distribution to describe these things, but I'm going to skip this because negative binomial distribution have been used for these things. Okay. Well, just below we will see that the parameter c scales as a power of the L. Remember that is the width of the cell. Okay. With exponent 1.67, okay? So we can replace this by this. Again, this is very simple mathematics, okay? So you can plot this using the moments or using the variable L, okay? So this is equivalent. But now we have estimated the value of this exponent. I will show later how to do this, okay? So you can write the scaling law in this way. And this law is very interesting mathematically. By the way, if something is not clear, I think you can interrupt me. I think it's allowed interruptions, right? Okay. Okay, I don't know if I'm boring you or this is too simple. But believe me, this is very simple mathematics. Well, what happens here? If I have a cell of size like this and I increase the cell, if I double the L, if I double, I go from one cell to four cells. So if I count the number of individuals in a larger cell, what I'm doing is I'm summing 4 cells, okay? I think I would need a blackboard here, but okay, don't worry. Okay, what we have here, remember, when you increase, you double the size, you have 4 cells instead of 1. What you are going is that the new number of inhabitants is the sum of 4 of them. Okay, so we are summing random variables. What we are doing is a sum of random variables. Okay, we know that the scale parameter of h is L raised to tau 2. This is how we call this parameter. And then h grows in this way. Multiplied by 2 raised to tau 2, which is 1.67, sorry. And this is 3. So when you double the size of the cell, the number of inhabitants gets multiplied by 3. This is the scale parameter, okay? Because there is randomness here, but the scale parameter that describes the distribution grows in this way. What does it mean? So I think this is very profound from the mathematical point of view. This means that when you rescale the variable by this L to this power, the distribution is stable. It means that the distribution does not change. This is the same that you do in the central limit theorem. In the central limit theorem, you sum distribution and then you rescale in order to compare with the original one. Okay? We are doing the same. We are aggregating, but then we are rescaling in order to compare. So the thing, if the thing is stable or is invariant, it means that it does not change under this transformation. So in the most well-known case, this should tend to a normal distribution. But we have seen that we don't have a normal distribution. We have something like this that does not look normal. Also, you have the generalized central limit theorem. We don't have also a Levy distribution here. We have a new distribution. So the central limit theorem is not fulfilled, but we have a different distribution. For the reason we said that we have a new central limit theorem that we have not proven mathematically, but just empirically. We have found an empirical distribution that verifies this central limit theorem. Okay, this sort of new central limit theorem. Okay. Okay. This is the data. So this is from the mathematical point of view. This is interesting, but what is even more interesting is this is done with real data with population. So population data contains non-trivial mathematics. This would be one message. This can be related with multifractals. You have a thing that is called the multifractal partition function, in which you essentially compute moments in a different way. You rescale the moments in a different way because you divide by the total number of inhabitants. Sorry. Well, if you take this definition, you realize that this multifractal partition function is directly related to the moments of the distribution. Okay, so, well, under the multifractal scenario, this thing should scale in this way. This is if multifractality is fulfilled. If multifractality is fulfilled, you have this property. This thing scales with this exponent, and these exponents are called the mass exponents, which depend on Q, okay, the order of the moment. You realize also that you divide the second moment by the first moment, and you have some relation, and you can relate with the previous thing that we were seeing. So essentially, we obtain the distribution that we were, sorry, not the distribution, the relation that we mentioned before. These two things are related. Okay, this is simple stuff. Okay, and this tau 2 is just the second mass exponent. Let me see how much time do I have. 5 minutes only. Thank you. Well, in 5 minutes I can do many things. Okay. Yeah, we have this relation. Okay. Well, we already know that there are only two sorts of moments, those that are constant and those that grow with C, with the scale parameter. So the mass exponent have to verify this relation, and you see very quickly that you only have two max exponents, and you obtain this from the moment of the distribution. From the moment of the distribution, you obtain that you have constant max exponent for q smaller than 1, let's say, and others that are linear, okay? Okay, so this is the relation that you find. You find that the scaling of the distribution tells you that the data should be multifractal. And if you verify, if you compute this multifractal partition function, you see that indeed for negative values you have a constant exponent, so this has the same slope, this is constant, and for positive values you have a slope that grows linearly. This is that we have, and in this way you can fit the exponent. This is the way in which you obtain the numbers 1.67 and 1.29, that is the fractal dimension df. Okay. Well, the multifractal spectrum is another thing, another variable that you can compute. Is obtained just from a Legendre transformation of the max exponent. So you only have to compute this thing. This is a Legendre transformation, and alpha is the derivative of the max exponent. If you do this is very, very simple. This is high school mathematics. You obtain this. You obtain two values of alpha, the singularity exponent, that is 0, and tau 2, and f of alpha also has two values. And this means that what you have in this population of people in Catalonia is a bifractal. We are discussing with Antonio Turiel if this makes sense. We have some open questions here. So some messages is that, well, spatial, maybe human or ecological patterns are interesting from the mathematical point of view, and also, of course, on its own interest. Finite scaling and multifractals are relevant tools, and you already have that expertise on multifractals at the Instituto de Ciencias del Mar, okay? Because multifractals is the method that the group of Antonio Turiel is using to analyze ocean signals, okay? So you already have this expertise. But this expertise, my message here is that it's important also, not only for analyzing geophysical signals, but also in ecology. Okay, I have a very, very short part now. I can explain in 2 minutes if necessary. This is a related thing. Okay, this is a different thing. This was done in collaboration with Frederic Udina and Elsa Arcaute. So we have been looking at, these are individuals again. What we are doing here is we are going to look for a natural definition of cities. We define a city as a cluster of occupied nearest neighbors surrounded by non-occupied nearest neighbors. Okay, so if this is occupied and this is occupied, this belongs to the same cluster. Okay, if this is empty, the cluster ends here. So this is the cluster, a cluster corresponding to Barcelona. This is a cluster corresponding to Sant Cugat. There is another cluster here. Okay, and well, this corresponds to 200 meters of resolution. The size of the cluster is the sum of the number of inhabitants in each cell. Okay, so this is the total population. We're interested in the total population. So this is a way to define cities without using the arbitrariness of the administrative definitions. Okay, you have this, for example, this corresponds to more than 1 kilometer. If you take this resolution of kilometer, you have that the largest cluster is associated to Barcelona. Barcelona is here, but you have a cluster that goes from Castelldefels to Blanes or something like that. Okay, and this corresponds to resolution of 1 kilometer, 350 meters. So if you move here, you always, in less than 1 kilometer, you always find some building with some people living there, and you have our cluster, of course. You can see how this thing changes with the size of the grid. Okay, when the size of the grid is small, the clusters are small. When this thing is bigger, the cluster gets bigger. Okay, we can count the number of individuals. So this is the population of the larger clusters have population. Well, this is Binet. So this corresponds to Barcelona, and so on. This change with the size of the grid. Okay, but this is related to Thieves' law. You know that Thieves' law has been used to characterize the size of cities. This corresponds to Thieves' law, but in fact we do not obtain Thieves' law, because Thieves' law should be a straight line, and this is really not straight. So our claim that the Thieves' law is not a good description. It's a good description maybe here, but it's not a good description for the whole data. And this is related again with ecology. In this case, some people working in Barcelona. Eric Galbraith is an oceanographer. Maybe you know him. I should finish here. Okay. Okay. I finish here. You can read the conclusions. Thank you very much.
I'm very sorry, but we have to get out of here at 12, and we have to be very strict with time. Sorry. We have time for one question. Well, we don't have, but one question.
Álvaro, I was wondering, because bifractality probably means, as far as I understand, bifractality means that you have some sort of a scaling that breaks down at smaller scales, and then you have like a different scaling. I wonder if this maybe related to the fact that you have a distribution of population on a larger scale, but then at a smaller scale you have streets which break this scaling.
We do not enter when the scale is broken. I mean, the scaling has to be broken at some scale that is below 100 meters. Bifractality means that we have two fractals superimposed. On the other hand, this comes from the distribution, so our approach comes from studying the distribution. So I do not understand well how the distribution implies bifractality. But maybe we can talk later.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So we go on with the following talks, and then we have 6 short talks from Geosciences now. It's going to take us 1 hour and 15 minutes. So we are going to split these 3 talks into groups of 3 each. So we better do 3 talks, then a little bit of questions, and then we continue. And I am asking to the people who is going to talk that they should shorten their talk for something like 20%. I will let you know. Okay?
After 12, we will be meeting in this P31, so keep your questions for Álvaro, and we can continue the discussion with Álvaro then, okay? Thank you.
Okay, good morning. My name is Antonio Villaseñor. I'm a seismologist, and I work at the Department of Marine Geosciences. And I'm going to explain a little bit the kind of problems that in which we can apply machine learning to geoscience, or marine geoscience in particular. So I will speak a little bit the things that we are doing, but mostly the things that we need help from you, from the Center of Applied Mathematics, and also serve like an introduction for all the other talks that will be related to marine geosciences. Well, recently there was an article published in Science in which they make a classification of the type of studies that you can use in solid earth, but also in marine earth geosciences, and they classified the studies in these 4 groups. One of the groups is automation, so you have a very routine task that is very inefficient, and you want to automate it using some machine learning methods. Simulation, so you have to solve some differential equation, like a wave equation, Navier-Stokes, and you want to do it not with the classical method, but you can accelerate it with using, for instance, neural networks. You can do inversion of optimization applications. You have some data, you want to obtain what is the best model that fits your data. That model can be many things. And then one more open is the discovery. You have data sets, and you can find patterns that are not clear in the data, but they can give you information. In particular cases, you have some seismic data, and you can predict using this data. You can predict laboratory earthquakes, not real earthquakes, but earthquakes in the lab. Okay. This is to emphasize the importance that the people that we have the expertise in marine geosciences, we collaborate with people that have the expertise in the mathematics. This is a paper that was published in Nature a few years ago, and what they did is they used deep learning to predict the pattern of aftershocks of large earthquakes using a deep neural network. And well, they got pretty good results, but then a year later there was this comment or this article in which they say that that these results can be obtained only with 1 neuron. You don't need to use deep learning or very advanced method to predict this. This is a kind of a harmless situation because it's basically this method works, but it's kind of overkill. You use a very advanced method to something that can be done easily. But the problem comes, and this is something that came out yesterday in Nature, is the problem that you can have when you don't really know what you're doing. You don't know your methods, and then you use data that is not appropriate. And in this case, this article, you can see it just came out yesterday. The examples that illustrate is from geophysics. We use some remote sensing data in which false assumptions or bad assumptions can give you to actually bad results that can produce unintended harm. Okay, so this is just to motivate why this workshop is useful and we need to collaborate. So the first of the 4 fields that we can use machine learning for geosciences is automation, so labeling, classification, etc. And this is a very important problem that we have in seismology. That is, we have an earthquake. If you remember your geology class from high school, you have the P and the S waves. And these are the arrival time of the P and the S wave is a fundamental data. You need those are the data that are used to locate earthquakes. So every earthquake that you see in the news has been located by people selecting the arrival of the P and the arrival of the S. This is very time consuming, requires very experienced people. Many of the seismic networks have people 24 hours doing this manually. And now the seismic networks that have gone to thousands of seismographs. So this is really an important bottleneck. In this case, it's very simple to pick the P and the S. You can see it easily. But real data is always more complicated, and this is an example of an earthquake in Canada that was producing a fracking field that produced a magnitude 4 earthquake. And this, you can see that here you see the P and the S, but it's much more difficult to pick. So what it has been done is to train neural networks with large data sets for which you have seismograms and peaks of the P and S. So you use these millions of seismograms with labeled P and S arrival times, and you train a neural network, and then your input to the neural network are the seismograms, the 3 components, the vertical, north, south, and east, west, and the output is the probability that you have a P wave, an S wave, or you have noise. Okay? Well, this has been very successful, and there have been a lot of, there are literally 1 or 2 papers every month that deals with this problem, and a lot of architecture have been used for the neural networks. This is the UNet type of network. This is one of the most successful methods that have been developed, but there are many others. This was published also in Nature recently, and it's a much more complicated neural network. It uses LSTM, etc. So what I want to point out here is that all these methods, the thing is that we as seismologists, we don't know which of these architectures is the best. Usually, this is done by people that don't have a very good knowledge of seismology, and in some cases, the opposite. So in this field, there is a lot of room for improvement. So there is still ways of knowing which is the optimum network, how do you select the data set for training, how do you do data augmentation, do you use the seismograms as input, or you use the spectrogram, or you use some power, like kurtosis or something of the seismogram? So there is a huge field of research in this area. Also, until now, the only seismograms that have been used are these ones, in which you have the direct P and S. It means that the earthquake is very close to the seismograph, and you just have a direct wave. But the thing that is really important in the developing future is that if you go to longer distances, you don't only have the earthquake here you have the station. You not always have the direct P. You have waves that bounce in the free surface, waves that cross the core. So instead of having a simple seismogram that's one, you have very complicated ones with a lot of arrivals that are multiple bounces in different discontinuities. So this is another field of improvement that hasn't been done yet in this part of seismology. Another important field in seismology that we as a classical promise, the discrimination between type of signals. The most important in the past has been the discrimination between earthquakes and nuclear explosions, or chemical explosions, the ones that take care in queries. In this case, this is an example in which we try to discriminate between earthquakes and seismic tremor. Seismic tremor is kind of instead of a sudden rupture, it's like a slower rupture, in this case in the subduction zone. Here is where in Japan, where this is the Philippine plate, gets under the Japan plate. Okay? So you have signals that look like this, that are earthquakes, and signals that look like this, that are this seismic tremor. This is all done in OBS data. For us, OBS means ocean bottom seismometer. As you know, most of the surface of the Earth is water, but we can only put seismic stations on land. And OBSs are the ones that are installed in the bottom of the sea. These are very expensive to install. They can only be installed for a short period of time. So it's very important that we understand the signals that are observed in these instruments. However, recently, we have been able to, with a new technology that is called DAS, means distributed acoustic sensing, we have been able to use fiber optic cables, that can be telecommunication cables, as seismic sensors. By installing one of these instruments that is called an interrogator, you can use a fiber optic cable like a seismometer. In fact, you can have a seismometer every 10 meters of the cable. This means that now areas where it was impossible to have seismometers can now be covered. This is a map of all the submarine cables, telecommunication cables, that actually currently exist in the world, so they are it's a very good coverage. And we have done experiments and we have installed these interrogators, these DAS interrogators, in for example, a cable that goes from Tenerife to Gran Canaria, and we have been able to sample this part of the cable here and this part of the cable here. Now the range of these things is like 60 kilometers, but it's rapidly increasing. Okay, good. So these cables and these new instruments record all sorts of signals. This is an example in which this is a whale, the vocalization of a whale recorded in OBSs and hydrophones, and this is the one detected in a submarine cable. So this means that there in this new instrumentation, these new DAS instruments, there are all sorts of new signals that we need to classify and understand what they mean. So this is a huge opportunity for machine learning methods in seismology. Well, another important aspect for us is simulation. Well, usually, in our case, we need to solve some partial differential equations, the Iacono equation to calculate travel times, or the wave equation to generate seismograms. So in our case, we have very good codes. This is a very good code that can you put a seismic source in a 3D model, and it calculates synthetic seismograms taking into account topography, bathymetry, earth rotation, self-gravitation, etc., everything. But these methods are slow. These are highly optimized, they use GPU, etc., but they have a limit. And sometimes we need to run these simulations many times if we want to test different parameters, etc. Now recently people have developed these methods that use neural networks to do scientific simulations. And if you believe the title of the paper, they can get up to 2 billion times acceleration. And one of the examples they use here is to solve the wave equation for seismic tomography. So this is something that is a field that really interests us. And there are the equations that are also useful for us. For instance, in this case, the Navier-Stokes. If we want to see the convection of the Earth and how the plates move, this is the type of equation that we need to solve. Optimization. So one of the typical problems that we do in geophysics is we have data, it's travel times of the P and the S, or we have waveforms, and we try to obtain the seismic model that best fits the data. So we want to get the distribution of P and S velocities inside the Earth, because we want to see where the magma chambers of volcanoes are, or we want to see where the subducting slabs go into the mantle, etc. So this is an inverse method. And we are still using very classical methods. It's a nonlinear problem, we linearize the problem, and we solve the problem iteratively, least squares. Well, in machine learning, when you train all these neural networks, there are a huge variety of methods that can be used to obtain all the parameters of the neural networks to do this optimization. And all these methods we are not using at all. We are still stuck with the old ones. So this is another field in which we need help to do that. And the results of these inversions are seismic tomography. In this case, you can see this blue thing is the subducting plate of the Atlantic that goes under the Strait of Gibraltar. So with this, obtaining these models, you can get very detailed images of the subsurface. And the thing is that we need to run these simulations a lot, because sometimes you have a model, but you need to have the uncertainties of the model. So in order to have the uncertainties, you want to run it very fast. And the last one is discovery. We are not working on that much, but you can, one of the things that can be done is, for instance, you have, this is a seismogram of what I mentioned before, a seismogram of a laboratory earthquake, and using these signals that look like noise, they have been able, using random forest, to make predictions of when the laboratory earthquake will occur. Laboratory earthquakes, you just have two rocks together, you twist them, and then they break. So these are a huge field for improvement here. And I will leave it here.
Thank you very much. Now it's time to, thank you very much, Antonio. It's time to Hector Perea.
Hello, thank you. I'm going to change a little bit in the geosciences from more earthquake to geomorphology and self-organized processes. This second part of self-organized processes is going to be just given to you by Claudio Lo Iacono. So which are the objectives that we have when we are talking about geomorphology? What we want to do, let me check. Okay. What we want to do is to detect and identify and map some seafloor morphologies that are features that can be like quantified physically or temporally. You know? And we want to do it automatically because we have right now a huge bunch of data about the seafloor morphology. And Claudio will talk to you about the modeling of the self-organized processes. So as I've told you, what we want to do is the geomorphological analysis, because nowadays we have like a bathymetric data that it's starting to cover the whole world, the whole extension of the ocean, as you can see in this image. So now we have a lot of data that is covering all the world, but we are not taking advantages of this data because it's huge and we are not able to quantify and analyze all this data at the same time. So what we need, it's like, well, we are interested in unsupervising mapping of the seafloor, looking for these geomorphological features that can give us some information, but also we need to quantify these features. We want to know how big they are. We want to know the volumes. We want to know the ages. So we need to estimate a lot of different things, but also we need to estimate the uncertainties related to these processes, the uncertainties related to the ages, to the features, no? To the quantifiers. So what are the objectives when I'm talking about this unsupervised geomorphological mapping? It's like we want to detect, as I told you, or to identify these geomorphological features automatically, and then we want to map and characterize them. So other objectives could be that when in this morphological bathymetry, we want to infer or to improve the quality of the data, that in areas that we don't have these observations directly, or in areas that we don't have the higher resolution that sometimes we need. So that's a thing that I will talk at the end of this short presentation. What is the available data? So we have a lot of digital seafloor information, bathymetric maps that can just be from metric grid size up to decametric or resolution size. So, and what we are the types of features that we look on these maps or on the seafloor. So we want to check for the possibility to have their submarine landslides, that these ones that you can see here, these lobes that are coming from this scarp that it has been sliding. We also want to determine and characterize submarine canyon channels or gullies, that the ones that you can see in this margin in California. This is Monterey. So you have a big channel, but also you have some other gullies and canyons on the area. We also want to localize mud volcanoes, like this one in here in this image resolution, or other features like pogmarks or active faults that you can see here, sediment waves, and other. There are a bunch of features to identify on the seafloor. Just to make you a little bit, because I'm talking about features, I'm talking about shapes, but these shapes, most of them can be just summarized or reduced to geometrical features. Like if we are talking about a landslide, it can be related to a lobular shape, that is the deposit, the material that has been sliding, and also it can be characterized at the top where the scarp, that it's like at the end it's a bended crescent. No? That's the shape that we can see. If we are going to analyze or to look for submarine canyons, we can talk about 3D elongated triangular base pyramids. So these are mathematical shapes or geometries that you can allow us to characterize on the seafloor morphology. If we are moving to the mud volcanoes, it's the same thing. At the end, we can just see the mud volcano as a truncated cone, so we can automatically identify on the seafloor. And then, if we have more resolution, we can also go there and identify different lobite features on this cone. So it's also another thing that you can allow. Or pogmarks. These are these small depressions that you can see on the bathymetry that can be reduced to negative hemispheres or even to truncated cones on the inverse. So you can see that there are different situations, different things to work on. Or on the field that I'm mostly working in, the identification of faults. Faults can be like are traces on the seafloor that can usually are displacing. So we have one block that it's like subsiding respect to the other. So it allows us to follow, like you can see here or here. You have like a linear feature that it has a topographic difference on both sides. So this can be like also another feature that you can recognize for sure on things. And with all this, what we want to do, it's like, so we want to automatically map these features, like you can see some examples here. Well, and with this automatic characterization or mapping, we want to extract these 3D objects, like here, the volume, the surface, everything that we can have. So that's the thing that we are starting to do now. So we are like working in the physical characteristics, like we want to try to get this length, the volume, the height, the radius, yeah. So we are using right now convolutional neural networks to characterize fault scarps. This is the fault, this is the height, this topography that it's this place that I've told you. And what we are doing with the neural networks is localizing the difference in the slope, and then we estimate the vertical distance. So what we have been doing is like generate synthetic catalogs of scarps. This is in collaboration with people from the University in Grenoble. Then we are using a convolutional neural network to identify everything on the data we have. And then we have a lot or a bunch of profiles. So that's the result. This is the manual work that we have been doing in geology for, I don't know, tens or more than tens of years. So this is a discrete mapping, a discrete volume of data along the fault scarp. And now we are using this convolutional network, the machine learning. So this is the same data, so you can see that it's producing more or less the same shape, but we here have like 20 times more data, so we can analyze better the changes on this fault scarp. But at the same time, what we are seeing that it's like this in these red dots are the real data that we have. So there are still some discrepancies that we are working, because it's not the same. This was developed for, let's say, on land fault scarps that they are related to another processes, and this is applied to the offshore fault scarps. So that's a thing that we are working right now. It's going to be part of a future project for the national plan. So if somebody is interested in doing or collaborating in these things, just contact me or talk to me later. So other things that we are interested is in the temporal edge estimation of these features. Like I don't know, in this case, you can see that there is more roughness in this mud volcano that in this area following. So it means that something is on top of the other. It has been more time from one deposition to the other. So we also want to characterize these chronological things on the features. So we can also in the scarps on the canyons or on the landslides, that it allows us the roughness to determine the geochronology. And just to finish, it's like we have called it like inference bathymetric data, because these are, so probably you have seen this a lot in the last times. So Adobe Photoshop, it has this super resolution tool that it's based on artificial intelligence methods, no? That it's like if you have the same photo, but you increase this photo for 4 times, you reduce, because you are interpolating, you reduce, you smooth the data, so it's not that sharp. But with this super resolution algorithm, you have like more sharp resolution on the same part of the data. So what we are like thinking, or we are proposing, or we can do, it's like do the same thing with the bathymetric data. So maybe we don't have enough resolution, or we are interpolating between one data and the other, but we could improve this resolution using some machine learning. This is like just some possible field to work on, so it's up to you if you are interested. We are interested, so that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hector, for your talk. It's now turned for Claudio, but Claudio is not here, so Xavi is going to talk for him.
Morning. Claudio cannot be here. He asked me to give his talk. So I'll do my best. I'm not a biologist, I'm not a geologist, I'm not even Sicilian. As I said, I'll try my best, but at least I'll try to convey the main message. Okay. So what Claudio is studying is cold water corals, and what he's more interested in how these corals start building. They start building these mounds in the bottom of the ocean. So what is geomorphology? And this type of corals. This is alive. Yeah. They are these axoanthellate, something like this. These corals don't have an algae that fixes the nutrients for them, so they are very dependent on the nutrients that they are on the currents, that they are in the water layer. So they are very important because they are biodiversity hotspots and habitat builders, as I mentioned before, and also because they are cold water corals, they live in deep water. So they are very important to keep in mind this ecosystem. They also provide important ecosystem services, and they are a unique setting in which there is a very interesting interaction between geology, oceanography, and ecology. Well, so Claudio has been, and his colleagues, they've been working on these corals, and they usually, so when you have these little mounds, the corals usually they start building their reefs on top of on the middle, on the top, on the highest point, and they build these structures, and the growth direction is determined by the direction of the currents, which is obvious. I mean, if you're looking for the food, that's where you want to be. So here in the institute, they did this experiment, flume reef experiment, in which they had these corals, deep cold water corals in a tank, and in which it was forced current, with some nutrients, and they put they build this artificial reef mound, and they put different corals on it. And what they found is, well, this is the current, the speed. Oops, sorry. So obviously, the speed is highest on the shallower part, and after just after the reef is where you probably have more turbulence and slow velocities. But what is interesting is that the corals that thrive the most were the ones that were on the top, the ones that were on the front, and then the ones that were on the shade of the reef, they were pretty much starving. And these guys here, they just survived. So the hydrodynamics is they're very important in the growth of these corals. And also there is a very interesting distribution of the velocity and with the growth of these corals. So if the velocity is too slow or is too low, the corals do not have enough food and they don't grow. If the velocity is too fast, the nutrients just escape and the corals cannot thrive. Okay, so I'm gonna skip through this. In a recent experiment in the Cavaliers mound system, this is in southern Spain in the Alboran Sea. So looking at very high resolution, 1 meter resolution bathymetry, what they found is that there were these structures, and they were full of these coral, cold water coral reefs, and they had these cyclic undulated forms, and here we have in the bottom what is the cut a profile of the bathymetry. So it seems to be quite well organized, and I think there is a fractal resolution to it. There is a fractal pattern on and self-organization in natural processes for these reefs that these corals have been building. Have to think that as they grow, they start dying, and they provide also shelter for other creatures. So it's very important, these ecosystems. What is important, I think, for Claudio is this is we're looking at a point in which biology, geology, and hydrodynamics are merging in one single problem. So it's a multidisciplinary approach that it has to bring a lot of things to the plate. And I think that's it. Yeah, but the main question I think Claudio had is this. You know, okay, the scaling is a problem. You know, how these corals can start building, and how if they have a limit. You know, as they grow, and also if there is a self-organized sort of a component in the growth of these corals. I think this is it.
Okay, thank you, Xavi. And now we have something like 10 minutes for questions for all three talks. So please go ahead.
Okay, so for this later talk, I would like to ask if you did some modeling on the tank experiment, some mathematical modeling.
No, you don't know. I have to say that.
You have to ask Claudio.
Okay, so I can have a look to the paper. Okay, I'm saying it because we are now working in a biodiversa project that we will explain next week with Philip, who's over there. And he has been developing fully spatially explicit models with PDEs, and we can include a lot of these processes. So even for a 3D system, it's harder, of course, but we can take into account the ecology, the hydrodynamics, and in order to make predictions for the tank experiments or for, Okay, because here I see a possible collaboration. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, I was involved in that work, so I can say that we didn't do the numerical modeling, but we did the gross numbers of what we expected to happen. We did a reduced model, physical reduced model, and did the gross numbers to make sure that the conditions in the flume were similar to the bottom, conditions in the bottom of the ocean, which is different because we have limited depth in the flume. But that's what we did.
Okay, so in our case, we could make a quite high-resolution model with all these 3 ingredients.
I'm sure Claudio is going to like it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question comes back to the first talk in this session. I like very much what you have explained, because one of the things that I criticize sometimes in machine learning is that it's not clear how to construct neural networks, and neural networks seem to be improvised just by trial and error. And I like very much that yours, they have a structure. But to understand better the difficulties of the model, I will ask an indirect question. Of course, what you are dealing with are time series, okay? And you could think that they are, of course they are not, like stock market time series or whatever. And there is a whole technology of working with time series that comes basically from economics. There are a lot of technology, filters, Bok-Jenkins things, and so on. What is the problem with those time series? They are so difficult that time series models, they do not work, and you need to go to artificial intelligence because of that? Or you think that maybe it could be a good try to think in this data as time series?
Yeah, well, I think that the traditional methods to pick the arrival times of the P and S waves, usually they work very well when the data is clean and there is not a lot of noise, so the signal to noise ratio is good. When the signal to noise ratio begins to degrade, then these traditional methods based on the amplitudes and the spectrum and all that, they don't do very well. So they produce, either they miss a lot of the earthquakes or they produce a lot of false positives. So recently they have taken this approach of neural networks, but of course, in seismology, we have not tried all these new methods that can be applied directly to the time series. So it might be that some of these methodologies can actually work. So in some cases that everybody is using now neural networks for everything, and sometimes simpler methods can also work well. So things that we don't have the expertise of which these new technologies are. So we can continue with neural networks and see which is the best architecture that can work for that, but it's also worth doing this because, of course, it's less time consuming and it requires less computation time, so it would be interesting to know which method exists that have not been applied yet.
I was not complaining about neural networks. Simply I wanted to understand the difficulties.
Yeah, I understand that. I am also... yeah. You don't always need neural networks, and in fact, if you don't have to use a neural network, it's even better because you require less computational things. You don't need to train them. You don't need millions of training data. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. Now we are going to continue with period of talks. Jonas is going to be the first. Thank you, Jonas.
Okay. Thank you very much for letting me talk today, because I'm excited to present my topics and potential collaborations. So let's see, what am I doing here? What is this? Here? No. Everybody sees it except me, right? Here? Step back. So, okay. First of all, I would like to present a little bit what I'm doing and where I'm coming from, so you can have an image of what I'm looking for. And then I will present some specific topics where I would like to collaborate, or actually would like to have some help also, because I'm not a mathematician, I'm actually a geologist, having jumped into numerical modeling. I added here mathematical, because for the sake of our reunion today. 3rd of November, of course. Okay, so geodynamic modeling, we talk about from small to large scale, but very large scale, of course, modeling the entire Earth. And why is it important to study plate tectonics? Because everything that we are used to, our life, the atmosphere, the waters in our ocean, all of it is actually related that we have active plate tectonics on our planet. So we need to understand it better. In terms of geologists, of course, we can then talk about the fact of that we have a new formation of oceanic crust on our planet, the waters in our sea, subduction, and everything that is related to it. For example, earthquake cycles, and also, of course, climate. You have the production of carbonatic rocks in the sea that takes the CO2, goes into the deep mantle, is potentially molten again, and comes out again in volcanoes that are related to subduction systems. And in the end, of course, orogenesis and the evolution of mountain belts. So just a little example to show you what we talk about in geodynamic modeling and what is important, what goes into it. This is an example of the Indian plate outlined. And what I want to show here is for plate tectonics to be active on Earth, we need to have very strong plates with very weak boundaries. Why does this image show us that? We can see that it's easier for plate tectonics to produce an entire mountain belt such as the Himalayas out to 8 kilometers high. It is easier to do that than to actually initiate a new subduction zone at the ocean continental boundary. So we have very weak boundaries here, but actually internally a very strong plate. How do we geologists know what is the strength of a rock or what is the strength of the ductile flow of the Earth's interior? We can actually use experimental apparatus. Here, for example, is a Griggs rig. We can apply a strain rate, so a certain fixed velocity, variable temperatures, and then we can measure the stress that is produced by this deformation. With this, we get actually a mathematical or a physical relationship between strain rate and stress that we later can implement into a numerical model or into a mathematical model. So what is the advantage of numerical modeling of geodynamic numerical modeling? We see the geologists, they can actually go really far back in time. We have rocks on the surface that are up to 4 billion years old. But we only have them on the surface. We can maybe drill a hole of 1 kilometer, 10 kilometers actually in northern Russia, but we're still at the actual surface of our entire planet that goes up to 6 kilometers deep, 6,000 kilometers deep. What about the geophysical data? We have geophysical data covering the entire planet, but of course it's only a snapshot of recent times. We cannot go back in time. So this entire square here, which is actually most of what we're interested in, we do not have available data, and we have to produce a time-dependent geological model with the constraints that we have from geology and also from geophysics. So this is just a simplification of everything what I'm doing, for example. What I'm applying a finite difference model that is written in MATLAB with the marker in cell technique. You have also other techniques, finite elements, finite volume, whatever you want. In this case, I use a finite difference model, the results that I will show you later. And it's mainly constrained of the conservation of mass, in this case, incompressible mass, conservation of momentum, the so-called Stokes equation. We see here we have stress, the deviatoric stresses, we have pressure, density and the acceleration in Earth. We have some heat equation and a certain rheology that we implement. And you see in this rheology, we have the relation between strain rate, which means velocity of something, or velocity, and the deviatory stresses, which we can resolve in viscosity and then put it into this term. And we can actually get as a result from our boundaries at the site that we apply in terms of velocity, we can get a viscosity solution of our model. So we modeled the viscous Earth. Did I flip? Yeah, in my case, I use a discretized, I discretized these equations onto fully staggered finite difference scheme. I just took a picture from the internet, it's not really important. But this is actually to let's say, increase the numerical resolution. Okay, the models I will show you, there can be many different ones with many different scales, is one that goes down to 600 kilometers because there we have a rheological and mineralogical change in the upper mantle. You can see here the upper asthenosphere, or the upper mantle asthenosphere. We have the lithospheric mantle, and then we have a crust on top that all have different properties, different densities, different rheological laws implemented that we actually get from these laboratory experiments. We have the marker in cell technique, which means you have a Eulerian grid with nodes, but the Lagrangian markers, and in this case several million of markers that we solve with the direct backslash solver in MATLAB. Everything is fully vectorized because, as you know, in MATLAB the for loops are super slow. Why MATLAB? Because it's an open platform that actually can be used by many of my collaborators that work in countries where they don't have access to clusters and so on. This is my excuse, but it's also a good reason. Okay, I will show you two results that maybe are a bit abstract for you, but that you can make an image of what I'm doing. Here we have on the left side composition, again, a asthenosphere that is viscous fluid over geological timescales. And the lithosphere and some crust, we actually extend the whole thing, so we produce a rift system within the crust. And on the right side, you have viscosity in a logarithmic scale from 10 to the 17 to 10 to the 25. If we actually have a very weak mantle, in this case because of its grain size, which for us is not important at the moment, you can see you can actually make a thermal delamination of the lithosphere, and you have a so-called convection system that goes super fast. You can see the time is actually not that far. We are at 22 million years. Another example is we implement not a slow grain size, but a randomly, or let's say self-consistent grain size evolution, and then we can actually produce a system where we have droplets of the lithosphere that go into depth and so on. The results for us are not really important. It's just an example for you that you see how this would look like when I'm doing science. So in the end, at this study, for example, we understood that, okay, the weak plate boundaries are actually given by the grain size reduction due to very strong strain localization, because if we have dynamic recrystallization, we smaller or we decrease the grain size in our olivine rocks and the rock becomes weaker. We know that because in the laboratory we actually did experiments with very fine-grained olivine, very strong or very large-grained olivine, and we see the difference in strength. And this is actually what we implemented into the code. Okay. Now, where are the points of collaboration or interest that I'm actually looking forward to? Because, as I said, I'm a geologist and I actually need some help. At the moment, I have this Stokes solver that I wrote myself that is pretty simple, incompressible. What I would like to do, I would like to upgrade the numerical model to a two-phase flow where we have solid and fluid and solve it on a solver level. So everything in the same solver. The other thing is improve the numerical implementation. For example, coding, solver systems, parallelization of the code, for example. This is something that I'm looking for. These are equations for upgrading the Stokes solver to an actual two-phase code where we have the solid and matrix. We have actually the elasticity of the pores, because it's important to calculate the Darcy flow also that goes actually into, that goes actually into the equation and so on and so forth. We don't have to read the equations. As a second step, as I said, the numerical solver different solving systems. At the moment, I'm solving it with the backslash solver in MATLAB, and it takes more or less 40 to 50% of the entire stuff, even if I have millions of markers. Because it's fully vectorized, everything that is vectorized is super fast, but the backslash solver is super slow, of course. Maybe preconditioning would be something, or maybe even using a solver like Paradiso externally from MATLAB. But these are things I could maybe be doing, but I need another 10 years. And then the institute is angry because I'm never publishing anything. Okay, that was it.
Okay, we move on with Urgeles. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jonas.
Okay, so my problem here is probabilistic tsunami hazard assessment from submarine landslides. By way of background, my name is Roger Urgeles. I work at the Laboratory of Seafloor and Subseafloor Geological Processes, part of RISNAT, an excellent research group that involves also researchers from the University of Barcelona and the Autonomous University of Barcelona. First of all, as a sort of introduction, I would also say that landslides generate tsunamis as earthquakes do, as any sudden displacement of the seafloor. And according to the US National Geophysical Data Center, in the past 100 years, there have been about 1,200 tsunamis that have caused 300,000 fatalities, and about 150 of all of them have been caused by landslides. The map here shows actually the distribution, the sources of the tsunamis generated by landslides. And the symbol size is here actually proportional to the tsunami intensity. In terms of tsunami hazards, it has to be recognized that earthquakes are relatively frequent events. They occur along well-defined zones, that is, fault plains, and there are well-established probabilistic tsunami hazard methodologies to assess tsunami hazard from earthquakes. However, for submarine landslides, and particularly for large landslides, those are not so frequent events, and they are better evaluated on the long terms in periods not covered by tsunami databases, as opposed to earthquakes where we most often use historical databases. Also, submarine landslides do not tend to occur where they did in the past, and they are more spatially random than earthquakes. It has also to be recognized that critical infrastructures such as nuclear power plants are designed for probabilities of failures of about 10 to the minus 4 to 10 to the minus 6, which corresponds to events with return periods of in between 10,000 to 1 million years. And in this regard, the US Nuclear Regulatory Commission considers that submarine landslides are the most probable tsunami source to the US East Coast. And for this, to assess tsunami hazard from submarine landslides, I here propose to use databases, submarine landslide catalogs that are being developed currently in the frame of a European project that is called GeoInquire. And that actually provides data to the European research infrastructure, that is EPOS. The databases that are being developed have increased coverage. They have more events, about 5,000 source areas, and more than 2,000 deposits, and contain information that allows these databases to be used for tsunami hazard assessment. And here I'm showing a map. The database is currently being developed by researchers in Spain, in Portugal, France, and Norway. And here's a screenshot of the database, of an earlier version of the database as is being currently being served by EPOS on the EPOS website, together with other geohazard information such as maximum inundation height for tsunamis induced by crustal and subduction earthquakes for a return period of about 10,000 years. So I'm showing here just for a dot, but these maximum inundation curves are available for each of the dots here along the coastlines. And tsunami hazard from submarine landslides can sort of be described as the potential that a certain tsunami exceeds a certain height at a certain location in a given time frame. And that is a function of the submarine landslide hazard. Okay? And submarine landslide hazard, in turn, can be described as the probability of landslide occurrence at a certain location, the temporal probability, and the probability that a landslide exceeds a certain magnitude. I have envisioned a sort of a procedure, sort of a workflow, where we can actually derive this tsunami hazard from a synthetic catalog of submarine landslide that actually respects the submarine landslide susceptibility from actual data and the frequency magnitude relationship from actual data. Here, for example, I'm showing a frequency magnitude relationship for submarine landslides in the Gulf of Cadiz. We have volume as a proxy for magnitude and events per 1,000 years as a proxy for frequency. And the Gulf of Cadiz is the red curve, so notice that there is a rollover here that is related to observational bias. Basically, smaller landslides are not detected as easily as larger ones. And we also see a series of synthetic power law relationships that have been generated according to this transformation method of Closet. In terms of spatial distribution, this is a synthetic catalog of submarine landslides where the dot size represents individual landslides and the dot size represents the magnitude, that's to say the volume of the landslide. Notice that in the background there is a probability of failure map, that is a susceptibility map, and this synthetic catalog is generated according to a reverse randomized current recursive raster algorithm developed by Theobald. Notice here in the histogram that we have in blue the frequency, the probability of failure frequency along the map. Okay, so notice that most areas have low probability of failure, and the red histogram shows the probability of failure for the synthetic catalog. The black line is the ratio between the two, indicating that areas that have higher probability of failure in the susceptibility map have also higher proportion of landslides. Okay, so the map, the catalog, sorry, respects the actual susceptibility of the map, and also conforms to the frequency magnitude relationship that I've shown before. It may seem that the problem is quite advanced, but there are several issues that need to be resolved before we can proceed into the tsunami hazard analysis. Basically, we have to deal with incomplete catalogs. Basically, the catalog is biased for smaller magnitude events or for older events. So coming to a question that was yesterday posed by Pere Puig, one initial question is, what is the actual submarine landslide population? It's not clear. There is also uncertainty in the temporal distribution of the landslides. Do they in a quasi-periodic fashion or a random fashion, or do they cluster at certain times? There is also concerns about the number of events that need to be entered in the synthetic catalog and how this relates to the actual number of events in the landslide catalog. Also how the number of events relates to the time span of the catalog. There's also problems or issues on how to deal with variability in other parameters in the landslides, in the catalog, such as elongation of the landslides with respect to the slope, area volume thickness relationships, the rheology of the landslides. And then, of course, there is, because this involves the generation of many events, there is an issue of probably high performance computing. Several scenarios need to be propagated into the landslide dynamics and into tsunami generation and inundation. And finally, there is the description of the tsunami hazard statistics. So thinking of forms of cooperation, I recognize here that there are several disciplines involved, from geoscience to physics in terms of numerical modeling of landslide dynamics and tsunami generation and propagation. But there's also probabilistic issues, and also computer science is probably involved. So is this perhaps the avenue for an ERC synergy? Maybe, I don't know. To bear in mind is that the products that be generated by this work can also contribute to European research infrastructure such as EPOS. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger. A nice turn to Xavi again. And then after Xavi's talk, we'll have another 10 minutes of questions.
Thank you. So this time is me. This is a work that was part of the thesis of Savitri Galeana years ago. She presented in 2016, and since then she has moved. Now she's working in something which is also very interesting. Is biogeochemical modeling including all these biogeochemical models into hydrological models, which is a challenge. Anyway, what I'm talking today is about control source electromagnetic methods, which is a geophysical technique. What we measure is the electrical conductivity, which is the inverse of resistivity. So when you get one of our publications or listen to one of our talks, we switch between conductivity and resistivity depending on what we're talking about, if something is conductive or resistive. It's complementary to other geophysical techniques and is what is very important. It's very sensitive to the presence of fluids. So that's recently has been used a lot in environmental studies. So what we proposed was 2.5D modeling. Obviously, the Earth, what we assume is 2D, and the 0.5 is because the source was 3D. So the source could be in any direction. And we use the finite element modeling, and finally the inversion, which is the most interesting part of this talk. So here we have what I'm talking about, this marine control source electromagnetic. So it's basically a transmitter that is towed behind a boat in which there is an antenna that generates an electromagnetic signal. It propagates through the subsurface, and then there is an array of either tag-along receivers, which we can see in this photo here, or there are standalone receivers, much like the OBSs that Antonio was talking before. So these are 3 examples that I just got from recent literature. This is 2 of them are from Eric Atias, but this is what we used to do in the past. Reds are conductive and blues are resistive. So in this case, this is in Norway, in offshore Norway, and the target was these blue anomalies are pipes of fluid. In this case, it's gas, so methane escaping from the sediments. Oops, sorry. And then there are 2 more examples. This is very interesting. This is from Hawaii, and is studying the submarine discharge of fresh water coming from the continent or from the island into the platform. In this case, Eric managed to do. He had a really good model, and he managed to do an analysis of the results, and he could estimate what was the salinities of the water coming out of these springs, so freshwater springs in the platform. The last experiment, the last example is an experiment we ran in 2019 in Malta, offshore Malta, and what we did is this is what we have here in the bottom. This is the electromagnetic image, and this was the only one that we could use to convert into estimate salinities. What we estimated is that there were quite noticeable layer full of fresh water, probably fossilized since the last glaciation period. So what is important about that slide is that if we want to use our results and we want to provide more information about the current state of the subsurface or estimate parameters, we need to have better models. So that's, well, I already talked about finite elements allow us to build better geological structures that are not boxes or squares, and it allows us more flexibility, so we can have, when we are far away from our receivers, we can have larger elements. Our model also allows for changes in constitutional parameters, so we could, besides estimating the resistivity, we also estimated anisotropy. And finally, we did the complete modeling of the sources. We didn't use an approximation. These are the Maxwell equations. I'm not going to go through them, but this is the expression of the complex conductivity, in which the frequency and the magnetic properties of the media are included. So it's this hat sigma. These are the constitutional parameters: electrical permeability, magnetic permittivity, and finally the resistivity. And we consider time dependence as that one. The governing equations, once we convert the Maxwell equations into the wave number domain, and remember, for a 2.5D model, so we don't have, we have only the X and the Z, we don't have the Y. So turn into this, these are the equations that we're solving, and these are some of the elements. We use an adaptive mesh using quadratic Lagrange elements and L2 norm error estimation for posteriori mesh refinement. And so this is an example of how our mesh, so this is the area of interest, and this is the yellow box is what we have here. So you can see there's even more refined. For the solver, we decompose the fields into potentials of basic functions, and we use, we reach the same equation as in any modeling problem. A is large, sparse, and highly ill-conditioned, and we use MUMPs as a solver. As an example of this forward problem, we have this semi-analytical solution. It's a problem that is well established in literature, and we had a really good match. So this comes the part which is more interested. What we proposed for the inversion, it wasn't to do what everybody is doing in the community. Instead, we tried to use a PDA constraint optimization problem in which the fields were included in the objective function. So we estimated the inversion and the forward problem at the same time. The inversion parameters that we get is the electromagnetic fields estimated, the conductivity model, and a set of Lagrange multipliers. The implementation details are here, which is pretty much what we use for the gradient. We use the adjoint method. We use MUMPs also to solve the additional linear system with only one substitution. For the adjoint method, we only had to estimate one forward solution, so which is usually you have to calculate at least two. The only problem about this method is that you have to estimate the Hessian, and also that you estimate all the frequencies at once. So you don't do, usually it's one frequency as the other, it's sequential. In this case, it's all at once. Because there is not a free meal, what that means is that we need a lot of RAM memory, but it's not a problem for the clusters that we have now. And yeah, this is an inversion example, and this is a comparison. So this is the original model, and this is what is the state of the art, and this is our result. And we use less receivers to get what you cannot see here, but the RMS is 1.1, and so it was it's a very interesting result. So conclusions. So we have this. We did this this algorithm. The inversion is based on a constraint inversion technique, as I mentioned. This is a prototype, and it works well for multi-frequency and multi-transmitter. We tested. The only problem is that because we were using, it was a prototype, we used COMSOL multiphysics and Marta, which is not the most efficient. And we were looking for how we implemented this as a standalone robust version, and probably using open source libraries. And this is all for me, but I Elisa Bardalet asked me yesterday if I could show this to you. It's an invitation. Elisa is part of a consortium for an ITN, well, where they used to be ITNs, now they're doctoral networks, marine ecological Curie actions, and they're looking for a mathematical partner to join their consortium. So if the deadline is approaching soon, but here you have her contact if you're interested.
Thank you very much, Xavi. We have now 5 minutes for questions before the coffee break.
My question is about why, very interesting by the way, the organization of the software. My question is about why Galerkin. This is just because the matrix is very large and sparse, and then Galerkin methods are doing very well, or there are other reasons for Galerkin?
I think the main reason is because we use COMSOL.
Ah, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, well, I had a question for you and also for the first speaker, because you have expressed different opinions. It's again about the COMSOL and MATLAB question, no? As you said that you definitely will have an issue because of the restrictions that, like the Galerkin methods, no? Obviously if they're implemented in COMSOL multiphysics, they would remain standard. Nobody's going to question because it's far too much work to start from scratch. You're also using MATLAB, but so was your first colleague to speak in this slot, Jonah, I think.
Jonah is there,
yeah. But Jonah said, I'm fond of MATLAB because it allows me to be open. But MATLAB, as far as I'm concerned, is a licensed product that, in our case, we have a project that had to be translated from MATLAB to Octave and then into Python, because it's something that we want to be used by people who are not really going to touch the code anymore, not so much. One of our social impact projects, let's say. So, do you work with Octave, or do you have a different approach with MATLAB that we ignore?
Okay, so yeah, as I said in the beginning, it's kind of an excuse, but also there is some reason behind it. And I mean, the thing is, I started to write it in MATLAB. At one point, I actually tried to convert it to Julia. But I understood that it would be so time intensive that I kind of abandoned it. But this could be a project for somebody. I mean, that code is 10,000 lines. It's several tens of lines, and to convert it to Julia takes time, but could be a project for a master. I don't know. It's difficult for me to approach the idea of how long it would take for somebody who understands what they're doing. This would be understanding more than I do. MATLAB, of course, if I work with people from, I work with a lot of people from Iran. So they just have correct licenses. That's it. So, of course, everybody has MATLAB.
One particular project. I mean, COMSOL is very, very expensive as far as I'm concerned. I've never worked with COMSOL myself, but I mean, as far as we have tried to do a proper institutional open software policy, COMSOL became a point that we haven't sorted out, let's say. So MATLAB was something that could be sorted out with a lot of work, but I mean, with COMSOL we also face some blank points, let's say.
Yeah, no. We hit, COMSOL was like a wall, like trying to hit a wall, because it's limited and it's a black box. So we reach the limits of COMSOL. But it's, you know, I didn't want the student to spend time coding or using libraries, spending time, you know, I wanted her to focus on the physics and getting the results, because the object was to build a prototype.
Okay, thank you. I think we are done and in time, so we can go up for the coffee break. Thank you. We have 30 minutes coffee break, so we stay here at 11:15 at most.
Jorba. I mean, although we share the surname, we are not relatives at all. So everybody asks. So. Well, the point is that as we were preparing it together, so we'll give the talk together. So at some point, we'll switch the speaker, and it's also less boring if the guide changes. Okay, so this is about numerical integration of differential equations. So when we were preparing the talk, that was last week, on the first days of this week. So I had some thoughts about this meeting, and then once I'm here and I see the talks, I was wrong. So probably I should have prepared the talk after being here. But I mean, it's but I'll try to correct that while I'm talking. Okay. So the first part is, well, this is about numerical methods for ordinary differential equations. So in fact, I mean, we have been working in numerics for dynamical systems for a lot of time. So, and we are, let's say, software developers. So we study the mathematical part, we study the theoretical part, but we also code software. And I mean, part of it is in public domain, like this Taylor method, and other things. So if someone is interested, we can talk. So, well, let me start from the basics. What's a numerical method for an ODE? Well, that's a standard ODE. So this is a vector, that's the differential equation, and we have an initial condition. And a numerical method is a method that, starting from this initial condition, propagates the orbit, giving you a table of values of the solution of the trajectory. Okay. There are lots of methods. There's an extensive bibliography. There are lots of libraries with lots of different methods. So why there are so many methods? Well, the reason is that because first there are many kinds of equations, and depending on the equation, you want to use a method that adapts and takes advantage of the particularities. And another thing is sometimes you want different kinds of approximations. So there's also a variety of methods for that. So I don't pretend to survey all these. I mean, that would be a course, not a talk. So, but essentially, I mean, from the user point of view, there are explicit methods and implicit methods, for instance. That's one category. An explicit method is a method that, given a state of the system, you compute the next. So knowing, let's say now, you compute directly the next step. An implicit method is a method in which the future state is given by an equation that you have to solve. And then this means you have to apply a numerical method to solve this equation. Okay, it could be a Newton method or a different kind of thing. So, why this difference? I mean, with my definition, I mean, explicit looks much nicer than implicit. Okay, that's true. But there are some kinds of equations that require implicits. So let me talk a bit about that. So let me mention what Steve is. I mean, this is a concept that appears. If you do numerics for the ODEs, that's a concept that is there. And I've realized that, many people know the name, many people know that's bad, but they don't understand why it's bad and why I should change things to deal with this. What's the meaning of that? So let me try to explain it. So let me take an example, the easiest one. So this is a linear equation, the solution is an exponential, and this lambda is going to be a large positive number. So this means that when time advances, this goes to 0 very, very fast. So imagine lambda is 10 to the 6. So this equation, the solution in practice is 0. So after a little bit of time, is 0, right? So why I'm considering this? Well, sometimes you have a solution in a space or in a multiple space, and you have a direction which is very attractive. Not all directions are attractive, but one of them are. Okay, and that's a sort of modeling of that kind of very attractive behavior in one direction. Okay, so let's see why we call this a steep and what happens with this. This is a steep thing. Okay, so let me use also a very simple direct method, the Euler method. I haven't explained the Euler method because if someone knows a little bit of ODEs, they know that method because it's the simplest and the most basic one. But essentially, the idea is that if I have this equation, you can look at that as a velocity. So my next point in the future is the actual point at some time interval, the velocity. So that's a very, very simple method. Okay, let's apply the Euler method to this equation. That's very simple. We simply, that's f. So we put f here. So that's what we have. That's a little bit of algebra, and that's what we get. Okay? So, the next point is the previous point times this. So this means that for all times, that's the kind of solution I get. Well, here we have a huge problem because I expect the solution to go to 0. Remember, the true solution is exponential that goes to 0 very, very fast. So here, for this to go to 0, this thing between parentheses has to be less than 1. Because it's power n. Okay, but for this to be less than 1, h has to be less than this. So, if lambda is sort of 1 million, h has to be chosen less than 10 to the minus 6. So we have to choose a ridiculously, a step size so small that it's even ridiculous due to a direction that does not matter at all because it goes to 0 and disappears. Okay? That's a steep system. That's the steep behavior. Okay? And due to this thing is that we have to choose sometimes implicit methods. Again, not all equations are like that. But let me go. What if we choose an implicit method? How this changes? Okay, so let me use the implicit Euler method. Again, I'm taking the simplest one. Okay, so that's the equation. So this is like if you remember the Euler method I was here a moment ago, here I have Tn xn, so it's Tn plus 1 xn plus 1. Okay? That's using, for the velocity, the future approximation. That's an implicit method. So, given xn, to find xn plus 1, I have to solve this equation. That's why it's implicit method. Okay? But in our case, that's quite simple. So let's apply it to this equation. So I change f for this. So I have to send this to the other side, blah, blah. Now you get that. So that's the solution. And now that's totally different because lambda was positive, but now it has a plus n. And h is my time step that is positive because I'm going forward in time. So, okay, that goes to 0 always, as it should. Okay? So the difference is huge. And because of this phenomenon, sometimes we need to use implicit methods. Of course, implicit methods are much more expensive because at every step you have to solve this. So your simulation will be will be slower because you have to solve that. So the point is to know if an equation is stiff or not. Because if it's not stiff, you can use a direct method, which is much faster, no problems. And then if it's stiff, then you pay the price, and we use implicit methods. Okay? Okay. Another comment, well, that is, so here, I mean, what will Mark explain after me is a software package that uses a Taylor method for integrating differential equations and doing lots of things on differential equations. So this method is explicit. So it does not deal with the stiff equations, but detects the stiffness and it warns you. So if you are using it, it will warn you that you are using me on a stiff equation. Okay? So that's, say, the best thing you can ask to an explicit. I mean, if it's a stiff, don't do it wrongly, warn me. Okay? Okay. The second comment is that many numerical methods contain an error estimate that is used to adjust on a step size to control the error of the integration. So typically you ask for an accuracy 10 to minus 10, 10 to minus 12. Maybe in biology 10 to minus 3 is enough, I don't know. I mean, it's depending on your situation. So you ask for an accuracy and this part of the code chooses the step size such that you can advance in the numerical integration below that error. Okay, that's the idea. Well, usually all this is in the mathematical literature, and now this is in red. If you look at the mathematical literature, these estimates have hypotheses. This is something mathematicians were used to them, but it's very easy when you do practice to forget about them. You simply take the method and run. I mean, a numerical method always produces numbers. So that's fine. That's what I want. Okay? So, but well, these hypotheses, they are usually generic, but in some cases they can fail. And then, if you don't realize of that, you are in, say, big trouble. Okay? So let me make another example of this. So, for instance, a well-known set of methods for the numerical integration of ODEs are Runge-Kutta methods. Probably, I mean, if you use numerics for ODEs, you have heard of them because they are probably the direct methods that are more used in the scientific world. Okay, they contain error estimates that is usually done using a couple of Runge-Kuttas with different orders, so it doesn't matter. So it estimates the error, and then if the error is too much for the given step size, it can reduce the step size and use it. Okay, let me take a very well-known method. I don't know if someone is using it. I mean, it's a good method. I mean, now I'm going to criticize it a bit, but it's a good method. It's the Runge-Kutta-Felber method. I mean, this is in celestial mechanics and astrodynamics, that's my main field. It's used extensively everywhere. And one of the reasons is that it was developed in the 60s inside the Apollo program for the numerical simulations to arrive to the moon. Okay? And it's accurate, fast, everything. But this step size control has an assumption. The assumption is that the derivative of the differential equation of the f with respect to x is not 0. Right? That's quite a very simple hypothesis. You don't pay attention. I mean, let me go back to the equation. When I'm telling you that the derivative of f with respect to x is 0, is not 0, what I'm meaning is that there's an x there. I mean, if there's no x, is when the derivative is 0, but then this is a stupid equation, because it's you are not to integrate. You don't worry about using those kind of things. So that condition is natural, and of course you have it. You don't care. Okay, let's see what happens if you are not careful with this. Let me take this ODE. That's a stupid one, linear, depends on a parameter, very simple. And I mean, I've cooked it such that it has this solution. So that's very easy to check that this satisfies the initial condition. And if your derivative sinus is cosinus, this cosinus cancels with this, and alpha sinus cancels with this. So that's the solution. Okay? Well, now let me choose. I mean, alpha is any number. So let me choose 10 to minus 4. A small number. I mean, that's not so strange. But probably you are guessing what I'm doing, right? So what I'm doing is that the partial derivative of this with respect to x, which is alpha, well, it's not 0, but it's small. And if you know that if something is not working when a parameter is 0, probably it doesn't work well when the parameter is very small. Okay, so that's what. Okay, so let's use a Runge-Kutta-Fehlberg of order 7 and 8 on that equation to integrate from time 0 to time 2 pi. I'm using 2 pi because as the solution is 0, I should get 0. Okay, I'm asking the numerical integrator a threshold of 10 to minus 12. So I'm asking for level of accuracy. And okay, that's what I get instead of 0. Okay, so I'm trying to get 12 digits and I get 7. Yeah, I mean, the point, I mean, somebody might claim, okay, with 7 digits that would be very happy. Yeah, but the point is that you have lost 5 digits in the way. Okay, I mean, I can make the effect more critical, asking for less and losing more digits. Okay, but on the other hand, there are other algorithms for step size control developed later. The one I'm going to use here is due to Jim Bernard in the 70s. That does not have that hypothesis. You don't have that requirement. And then when you use that, automatically you get 10 to minus 16, which is even better than you were asking for. Yeah. So it's, I mean, the moral of the thing, oh, yeah. The Runge-Kutta-Werner is a bit slower than the Fehlberg, the Runge-Kutta-Fehlberg. It's a bit slower. It takes a bit more time. Okay? The reason is that in the 60s, in the Apollo program, they want computers were very slow, and they want the numerical integrator to be as fast as possible, and they didn't care about this phenomenon because they don't have it. Okay? And the Werner fixes this, but the computing time is a bit is better. It goes faster. So it means that if your primary condition is a speed, and your equation depends on x clearly, so the Fehlberg is a better option because you have the same accuracy but faster. If you don't know, or this could be close to 0, then maybe you could consider using Werner or others. Yeah. So I'm doing all this to show you that to do a numerical integration of ODEs, that also is valid for PDEs. Okay. It's a bit risky to blindly use an algorithm without knowing exactly its properties, its characteristics. Okay? Because it might not work properly, it might not work as you expected, and you might not know it, which is even worse. That's the worst thing. Okay? Because you always get numbers. I mean, here, it's clearly we have a problem. There should be 0 10 to minus 7. We see the problem. But if here there's any other number, we don't realize. Yeah. Okay, so now let's go to our numerical integrator, which is Taylor, and Mark will explain it.
Good morning, everyone. I'm afraid I'll go a little bit technical. And since we have to finish at 12, maybe I'll skip some part of this talk. But first of all, I should explain what the Taylor's method is, which is something quite easy to understand. I mean, the what, but the how is not so easy to understand. So that's why we are going to devote some time on this. So we have Cauchy problem and ODE, and then the point or the goal is to construct a Taylor expansion of the solution. So we want the solution of the equation, and we want to construct a Taylor expansion up to high order of the solution. How we do that? Well, imagine that I have this equation and I differentiate with respect to time at both sides. I get something like this. There's a double, okay, there's a double dot there. So I have x dot dot, so I have the second derivative of the solution with respect to the vector field. I can compute the second derivative, evaluating the vector field, and of course, the derivative of the vector field, which is a Jacobian matrix or whatever. So I have the first term of the Taylor method is given by the vector field, and the second term of the Taylor expansion of the solution is given by this guy. And then I could keep derivating and get the third derivative of the solution and have an even more complicated expression for the third derivative, and so on, up to high order. And that's the point, going to high order. Okay, so this is obviously tricky and cumbersome. You cannot do it by hand, and has to be implemented in a computer program. But essentially, if we are fast and skillful enough to compute all these right-hand side of the derivatives, I can compute all the expansion of the solution, of the Taylor expansion. And this is, of course, the tricky part. So now I'll give some words on how to do that in a minute. But let's assume that we can go up to order n and compute all the derivatives of the solution, and we have a Taylor expansion of the solution. Then we can, of course, evaluate this polynomial. If I start at some n is a polynomial, I can evaluate the polynomial to predict the next point of the trajectory. So this is what we get. And notice that the error, or the order of the method, is n. And that's the important part, or one of the important parts. I mean, the order of a Taylor method can be chosen. There is an optimal selection, but I mean, it is as large as you want. And that's a good or a strong point of method, of the Taylor method. So, yeah, we can, fix an order, fix a prescribed tolerance or accuracy, and then we have some step size so that this is a good approximation. And then, once we have the next step, we do the same. We compute again the Taylor expansion of around the next step, and we iterate. So I think the idea is clear, but of course you have to cope with this set of derivative, which is cumbersome. So this is the practical issue. Compute the derivative of something, the vector field composed by the flow, let's say, or the solution, up to high order. And this can be solved by a very standard and maybe not so known technique, which is called automatic differentiation. Okay? Let me say that if we select a threshold, an accuracy, there is an optimal choice of order and step size. And a software that implements a Taylor method should always be using unless someone says the contrary, you should always be using the optimal choice for order and step size. And the optimal step size depends not on the order, well, it depends on the order, but essentially it depends on the radius of convergence of the Taylor series. It means that the radius of convergence depends on how many derivatives we compute, but given an accuracy, you don't need many terms to get the radius of convergence with a reasonable accuracy. And the optimal order, let's say, is linear with respect to the number of digits of the accuracy. So if you need double of digits, you have to double the digits of the accuracy, then you have to double the order. So I just want to say that when you have to go and integrate an ODE very accurately, so you require to be very accurate this is essentially the best option you have for explicit methods. So because if you need more digits, you don't have to reduce the step size. You can make a larger choice of the order. You can get, go to order 16 and you don't have more problems. So the algorithm keeps being fast due to the step size. And another point is that when an equation is stiff, this is an explicit method, so it won't work, but it will notice. Because the Taylor expansion of an stiff solution does, it has a very characteristic behavior. Essentially, if you look at the norm of the coefficients, it goes up to some point and then goes down. So Taylor method can't cope with stiff equations, but can detect. So it doesn't work, but knows that doesn't work. So it can be detected. So some points on the Taylor method, some summary. So essentially the point is this. It's the best option among the explicit methods when high accuracy is required. And if you go, up to, 200 digits, I mean, there is no competition at all with Runge-Kutta, whatever. Okay? The idea of how you do this, how you compute all this derivative, it is in principle quite simple to understand but not to code. So let me give you some words on automatic differentiation, which is the way you compute all these derivatives. So, and this is a standard method. Whenever you have a program that does something with numbers, real numbers, let's say, you can compute the derivative of this problem, of the output with respect to the input, no matter what the program is, by changing the arithmetic. So you normally work with a double standard precision, floating point, whatever, and you can switch this arithmetic with an arithmetic of polynomials, truncated polynomials, okay? And you can justify using very elementary mathematics like the Taylor expansion and the chain rule that this will produce the derivative of your program. So let's do a very easy example. So imagine that our program, what does is evaluate this polynomial of order of degree 2. And then we normally cope with real numbers, so x is a real number normally, but then we are going to switch this arithmetic of real numbers by an arithmetic of polynomials of degree 1. So this arithmetic has two real numbers, and this guy here, this delta, is a symbol. So it's the use of delta is to collect all the coefficients of order 1. And then I can, for instance, say that delta squared is 0, like the imaginary unit, but it just means that I'm gonna put at order 1 and throw to the garbage order 2 or higher. And then I can evaluate this function, okay, with this initial condition. Instead of x, I put 1 plus delta. And then I do all the algebra and get this. But delta squared is 0, right? So I put 0. And then I get this, 2 plus 3 delta. And then what I'm getting, in fact, is the evaluation of the function at 1, and the derivative is the coefficient on delta. And that's the standard. I mean, if instead of putting a polynomial of order 1, I put polynomial of order 32, I get a polynomial with the first 32 derivatives. Okay, so that's automatic differentiation. Whenever you have a program that does something, which is not this f, whatever it is, and of course the derivative exists, I can use this to compute all the derivatives. So, this is just technical issues on how to implement higher order derivatives. I won't enter into details, but let me say that there are simple forms of implementing all the, let's say, standard or elementary functions, like some product trigonometric functions. Here we have, as an example, the function power. So you can essentially compute or code your library of polynomials, no matter the degree or the number of variables. I mean, this works as well with several variables. So this can be done. And this is an example of the kind of thing you have to implement, that essentially everything up to order k depends on what you already computed on order k minus 1. And essentially, when you want to evaluate a function, everything depends on products of polynomials. So if you want an accurate, a fast library of polynomials, computing elementary functions, you have to be sure that your product is efficient, is well coded. And then everything will go fast. So, variational equations, and that's the second part of the talk, is, well, very easy to explain, again, not to compute, if you wish. So the variational equations has a purpose, which is to compute the derivative of the flow with respect to initial conditions. So the flow, the solution of the ODE depends on some initial condition, and under some reasonable assumptions, this can be derived with respect to initial condition. So if we have a general ODE, we have the flow, and then we can derive with respect to all the variables, and that's the derivative is a matrix. So one could be interested in that, and then I'll give some examples. So the reason why we are interested are usually because if we are, computing, for instance, a periodic orbit, I need to implement a Newton method, and to implement a Newton method, I need the derivative. Then I can care about the stability of orbits, so I should, work with the derivative as well to compute the eigenvalues. I could be interested in the Lyapunov spectrum or Lyapunov exponent, so I need also the derivative. So this is pretty handy, the first derivative and up to high order as well. So essentially, this Jacobian matrix of the flow with respect to initial conditions satisfies another ODE. Another ODE which is called first variational equation. That's the name of this section. And the first variational equation, it may seem complicated, but is the result of taking your initial ODE and again derive with respect to the initial conditions at both sizes, and you get something like this. So this is the Jacobian of the vector field, and this is our variable, let's say, what we want to compute. Okay? So usually what you do is you compute the Jacobian of the vector field by hand, and then put everything together, because this equation needs the solution to be solved. And this is kind of a pain in the ass, because you end up with a, let's say, large system. When large means depending on the initial size of the system. But if your system is times the dimension of the system of the original ODE is n, then the whole system OD plus variational equations is n plus n squared. So we want to avoid doing that like by hand. And we solve that by means of jet transport, which I won't enter into details because is what I explained, automatic differentiation is to change your stepper, okay, by your stepper by a stepper that uses automatic differentiation. So instead of using Euler method or Taylor method or Runge-Kutta methods on doubles or real numbers, you use it on polynomials. And then you get the solution of the variational equations. If you have, so this is the idea. You have a stepper that can be any stepper, and you change the arithmetics, you get the derivative of the flow with respect to initial conditions for free. That's it. And there are some questions that, I mean, some numerical questions that like how the error behaves and how the solution depends on the order of the method and how to choose the step size. And let me say that those are kind of open questions some years ago, but we have a theorem that says that when you do this, don't look at the theorem, which is very complicated and we don't care about that. But when you do this, use an automatic differentiation on a ODE, you have exactly the same algorithm than integrating, I mean, computing the derivatives by hand and integrating the variational equations together with the flow. And when I say the same algorithm, is that you do the same operations, but maybe in different order. Okay? So we were able to prove that. So the same input, the same output is produced. There are no other sources of error. And this is fulfilled by all the Runge-Kutta methods, Taylor methods, multi-steps, linear multi-step method. So this is essentially fulfilled by most of the methods known. Implicits or explicits, it doesn't matter. So this is the point. Most of the methods work well with this. So essentially, if the method is of order P, then we can get the derivative of the flow with respect to initial conditions up to high order, any derivative, with precision, I mean, of order P. And the step size, which was a pain in the ass as well before the result, can be computed like, I mean, you're integrating the whole, a very large ODE, so you compute the step size as you would do it if you were integrating a large ODE, no matter if you're using automatic differentiation or not. Okay. So let me give a couple of examples of why this could be interesting. I've indicated the use by, Newton methods, periodic orbit, and so on. But I'm going to explain a kind of a naive use of this technique, which is the control of error. I wanted to talk about Poincare sections, but I'll skip this. This is, as you see, very technical. Doesn't matter. So, and I'm going to very basics of numerical analysis, which is the error formula. So the error formula, essentially, of the evaluation of any function, comes with the derivative, with the first derivative. So that's the standard. So we could be interested in computing the first derivative of the flow with respect to initial conditions to track the error and how the error propagates as you integrate the differential equation. So we can use this technique, automatic automatic differentiation for that. And we can track the first directional derivative, which is a derivative of the flow with respect to x, is a vector. And then if there is a large source of error, a dominant direction, which essentially has to do with some large eigenvalue, then this derivative, when I integrate the flow, it will go to pick the direction of this dominant direction. So if B is the dominant eigenvector of the matrix, then this direction will go to it. And this can be used to estimate the error. So let me say that this is quite famous ODE, which is the Lorentz model. I won't get into details. Let me say just that for suitable parameters, this system is chaotic. So it means that, among other things, it displays sensitivity with respect to initial conditions. So essentially, when we do an integration, what happens is that you end up on this thing, which is called a chaotic attractor, which is chaotic. So we end up in this thing, close to this thing, but we don't know really where exactly are. So this is an example of propagation of two initial conditions which are separated by this vector. So 10 to the minus 8, 0, 0. This is the separation of the two initial conditions. And then they start here, and after some time, they detach from each other. And the time is not very large. I mean, I can track the error and of these two initial conditions. This is the error computed by hand, and this is the error tracked by the first directional derivative, which is what I get using automatic differentiation. And I can see that with 10 units of time, it is more or less okay. 20, more or less okay. 30, I lost 4 digits. 40, I lost 7 digits, and 50 units of time, I lost everything. And this can be tracked with the norm of the first derivative. So essentially, by computing the first derivative, you can be sure whether you can be confident on the result of your ODE or not. Because if we have this, we lost all the information we had. So, I mean, variational equations can be used to check whether you're doing the things well or not. Of course, these guys are trapped by the attractor, but we don't know exactly where we are. So, and that's the computation of the Lyapunov exponent that has to do with this, but this is okay. So let me, before finishing, just a minute, summarize what we've discussed and what we can do, and that's maybe the most interesting point for networking, which is accurate integration of ODEs, computation of Poincare maps, which I didn't explain what it is, but we can talk about, computation of invariant objects like periodic orbits, quasi-periodic orbits, continuation, stability of equilibrium points, periodic orbits, computation of Lyapunov exponent, detecting chaos, and bifurcation analysis of periodic orbits, equilibrium point, and so on. So this is essentially what we are used to do and in our research. And the reason of this slide is that if you are interested on something of this list, you can contact us and we can talk. And now, yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we shall
we have to leave, right?
Yeah. We should continue at room which is B31, but I think we can go together. I don't know if they're going to speak.
Yeah, more or less.
More or less.
They call me, but we don't.